So on behalf of the Columbus Karma Some Choling Tibetan Meditation Center in Columbus, Ohio, I'd like to welcome you to the final installment, I promise, of the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva. My name is Kathy Wesley, and I'm the resident teacher at Columbus KTC. And I want to thank all of you for helping us raise a lot of money. I'm guessing that this group was probably responsible over the life of this program for raising $1,000 or more for the Columbus Rebuilding Fund. So I want to thank all of you for your generosity in joining our class. And I'd also like to invite you to consider joining our next group, which will start in February. February 17th, also on Wednesday nights. There will be, I think it's another 5-week book club. It will be on Pema Chodron's book, Welcoming the Unwelcome. So that's something you can keep in mind for later. And you can find that on Eventbrite because it just started advertising it this last week. In addition, we're going to be celebrating Tibetan New Year on Friday, February the 12th, and we'll be doing 3 nights of puja the nights before. Chenrezi on Tuesday night, Tara on Wednesday night, and then a smoke offering puja on Thursday night, all at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So feel welcome to go to the virtual shrine room, which is mentioned in the chat. And you can, every Tuesday morning, we post the new links, Zoom links for that week. So just show up on Tuesday morning and you'll get the new Zoom addresses for our weekly programs. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to start with the recitation of the 37 practices, and I'm going to see if we can do screen sharing and we can recite them. Well, that is not it, but I bet that is it. There we go. All right. All right, there we go. So you can join in from where you are. And that reminds me, I have to make sure that I mute the participants. This is going to take a second because I have to go back to participants because I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, now everyone's microphone should be muted now. Part of the reason we do this is so that sounds from your house do not end up on the final video, which can be really interesting. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm going to recite the entire 37 practices to begin with. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. May all beings gain happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be cut off from the highest bliss, which is devoid of suffering. May they come to rest in great impartiality, which is free of attachment and aversion. The 37 practices of a Bodhisattva. Namo Lokeshvaraya. You see that all phenomena neither come nor go. Still, you strive solely for the benefit of beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig, to you I continually bow with body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddhas, sources of benefit and happiness, arise from accomplishing the genuine Dharma. Since that in turn depends on knowing how to practice, the practices of a Bodhisattva shall be explained. Now that you have obtained a human body, the great boat so difficult to find, in order to free yourself from and others from the ocean of samsara, to listen, reflect, and meditate with diligence day and night is the practice of a Bodhisattva. Passion toward friends churns like water. Hatred toward enemies burns like fire. Through dark ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to reject. To abandon one's homeland is the practice of a bodhisattva. Giving up negative places. Mental afflictions gradually decrease. With no distractions, virtuous activities naturally increase. When mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma is born. To rely on solitude is the practice of a bodhisattva. When old friends and relatives will separate, possessions gained with exertion will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. To let go of this life is the practice of a bodhisattva. When friendship with someone causes the three poisons to increase, degrades the activities of listening, reflecting, and meditating, to give up such a friendship is the practice of a bodhisattva. When in reliance on someone, your defects wane and your positive qualities grow like the waxing moon, to cherish such a spiritual friend more than your own body is the practice of a bodhisattva. Themselves captives in the prison of samsara, whom can the worldly gods protect? Therefore, to seek refuge in those who do not deceive, the three jewels, is the practice of a bodhisattva. The suffering of the lower realms, so difficult to bear, is the fruit of wrong deeds, so the Buddha taught. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never to commit negative actions is the practice of a bodhisattva. Like dew on a blade of grass, happiness in the three realms evaporates in a single instant. To strive for the supreme state of liberation that never changes is the practice of a bodhisattva. From beginningless time, your mothers have cherished you. If they now suffer, what good is your own happiness? Therefore, in order to liberate limitless sentient beings, giving rise to bodhicitta is the practice of a bodhisattva. All suffering comes from yearning for your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the intention to benefit others. Therefore, to truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if someone driven by desire steals all of your wealth or incites someone else to steal it, to dedicate to this person your body, possessions, and all your virtue of the three times is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if someone cuts off your head when you have not done the slightest thing wrong, through the power of compassion, to take his misdeeds upon yourself is the practice of a bodhisattva. Should someone slander you throughout a billion worlds, with a heart full of love, to proclaim his good qualities in return is the practice of a bodhisattva. If in the middle of a crowd of people, someone reveals your hidden faults and abuses you for them, to see him as a spiritual friend and to bow with respect is the practice of a bodhisattva. If someone whom you cherish as dearly as your own child takes you for an enemy, then, like a mother whose child is sick, to love that person even more is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even when someone who is your equal or inferior, driven by spite, seeks to defame you, to place him on the crown of your head with the same respect you would accord your guru is the practice of a bodhisattva. Though gripped by poverty and always scorned, though stricken by disease and tormented by evil spirits, to take upon yourself the negativity and suffering of every being and never to get discouraged is the practice of a bodhisattva. Though famous and prominent, someone to whom others bow, though you amass the riches of the God of wealth, to see that worldly splendor has no essence and thus to be without arrogance is the practice of a bodhisattva. If you have not tamed the enemy of your own anger, combating outer opponents will only make them multiply. Therefore, with an army of loving kindness and compassion, to tame your own mind is the practice of a bodhisattva. Since pleasures are like salt water, the more you partake of them, the more your craving will increase. Therefore, when something arouses attachment, to abandon it immediately is the practice of a bodhisattva. All appearances are your own mind, and mind itself primordially transcends all mental fabrications. Knowing this is the precise nature of reality, to remain free from dualistic conceptions is the practice of a bodhisattva. When you encounter objects that please your mind, know they are like rainbows in the summer season. Though they seem beautiful, to see they are not real and to give up attachment to them is the practice of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. To take such delusive appearances as true, how exhausting. Therefore, whenever you encounter unpleasant circumstances, to see them as delusions is the practice of a bodhisattva. If those who aspire to enlightenment willingly give up their bodies, what need is there to mention external objects? Therefore, with no hope of reward or benefit, to give with generosity is the practice of a bodhisattva. If lack of discipline prevents you from benefiting yourself, then your wish to benefit others is just a joke. Therefore, to guard discipline with no longing for worldly existence is the practice of a bodhisattva. For a bodhisattva who seeks a wealth of virtue, every harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without getting irritated by anything at all, to cultivate patience is the practice of a bodhisattva. If Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, who strive for their own benefit alone, expend effort as if to extinguish a fire burning on their heads, then, for the benefit of all beings, to cultivate joyous effort, the wellspring of positive qualities, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Vipassana, perfectly endowed with shamatha, completely conquers all afflictions. To cultivate meditative stability that transcends the four formless states is the practice of a bodhisattva. Without superior knowledge, it is not possible to attain perfect enlightenment through the first five paramitas alone. Therefore, joining it with the skillful means and not conceptualizing about the three spheres to cultivate superior knowledge is the practice of a bodhisattva. If you have not analyzed your own confusion, you might put on a dharmic facade while behaving in a non-dharmic way. Therefore, to continually analyze your delusion and then discard it is the practice of a bodhisattva. If, compelled by your own afflictions, you speak of the faults of other bodhisattvas, you yourself will degenerate. Therefore, never to mention the faults of those who have entered the Mahayana path is the practice of a bodhisattva. Desire for gain and honor leads to arguments, and activities of listening, reflecting, and meditating decline. Therefore, to relinquish attachment to the households of friends, relatives, and sponsors is the practice of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and compromise a bodhisattva's right conduct. Therefore, to give up harsh and unpleasant speech is the practice of a bodhisattva. Once you become accustomed to the mental afflictions, they are hard to cure with antidotes. Therefore, with the remedies of mindfulness and awareness, to eliminate mental afflictions the moment they arise is the practice of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you do, always examine the state of your mind. Cultivating mindfulness and awareness continuously to benefit others is the practice of a bodhisattva. To clear away the suffering of all infinite beings with superior knowledge free of concepts of the three spheres, to dedicate the merit accumulated through these efforts to enlightenment is the practice of a bodhisattva. Relying on what is taught in the sutras, tantras, treatises, and words of the genuine masters, I have composed these 37 bodhisattva practices to benefit those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. Because my intelligence is small and my studies few, I cannot compose poetry to please the scholars. Yet, since they are based on sutras and the teachings of the genuine masters, I believe these practices of a bodhisattva are not mistaken. Nevertheless, since the vast conduct of a bodhisattva is difficult to fathom, for one with an inferior intellect such as mine, I pray to the genuine masters to consider with patience all mistakes such as contradictions, incoherence, and so on. By virtue of the merit gathered here, by the power of relative and ultimate bodhicitta, may all sentient beings become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells neither in the extreme of existence nor in that of peace. The monk Togme, a proponent of scriptures and logic, has composed these verses in a cave known as Ngutral Rinchen Puk to benefit himself and others. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. And I have a situation that has arisen, and two people need to be let in who do not even have the who don't have the Zoom coordinates. So do I have Tracy nearby? Are you here, Tracy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. If let me send you 2 email addresses, and would you be able to send these people the link for tonight?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll try my best not to like do a whole bunch here. Let me see if I can find you, Tracy. I may not be able to do that. Oh, there you are. Okay, good. Okay, and this is going to take just a second while I read their email addresses. One will be a text message. And let me type that in for you, because he just, this fella just texted me saying, oh, was I supposed to sign up for tonight too? And the answer is, and I'm sorry if it was a little more complicated than usual this time around. I was not as attentive as I should be. And sending people things. So if you could text that gentleman.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I have a lady who has sent me an email. Okay. Okay, thanks to everybody for your patience there, because there we go. All
Got
right.
it, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate
Care of
it. Yeah, okay, thanks very much. This is what is known as a Dharma support teamwork here. So this evening, I hope that you enjoyed reciting the Bodhisattvas, the 37 practices tonight, and that you've been having a good time reciting them in your weekly practice. You're trying to recite them once or twice a week, and I hope that that you've noticed some benefit from doing so. And I think, let's see, judging from the time, we have about 7 verses to cover, but I'm happy to start the first 5 minutes here. If people have questions or if they have comments that they would like to make about the practice or anything, if they would like to do that while we're waiting for the other folks to show. If anybody has questions, you can unmute and ask questions or comment.
Hi, Lama Kathy. I just posted in the chat.
Oh, okay, great.
It's okay.
Why do we read the closing remarks? Because I think it's part of the composition. And so usually when a master's words are written, they're all kind of important. So I just go ahead and do it. I don't know if this is technically part of it, but since he wrote it, although his modesty is so beautiful, because my my studies are few and my intellect is limited and my studies are few. I can't write poetry to please the scholars. And I just think that's lovely. So yeah, I get a little something out of reading his words. So I don't know if it's required for us to read them or not. I just choose to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions that people might have?
Lama Kathy?
Yeah.
Just a comment. Some of these, every time I read it, there's like a different gem in there that kind of strikes me. But every time I come to, the conduct of a bodhisattva is difficult to fathom. I always find that a little encouraging. Like, oh, I don't feel so bad. It's difficult to fathom. So I'll keep muddling along, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's so true, isn't it? Because Kempo Karthar Rinpoche said once, I guess you could call us the left behind people, he said, because, we didn't get enlightened during the time of the Buddha. Whoops, while the Buddha was alive on earth, we didn't get enlightened then. Whoops. So we're kind of left behind and we're sort of leftover people, he said, but he said through the practices, we gradually train ourselves. And I think that if we look at the Bodhisattva commitment to try to reduce self fixation and self-clinging, it's a lifetime process because as Bokhar Rinpoche said in his book, he said, even babies in a cradle don't have to be taught how to say mine. They don't have to be taught about that. They naturally go mine. And so he said, we're going against lifetime after lifetime of training and fixation. So it's going to be, these habits are going to be unlearned very slowly. And I think that's why we can't fathom the activities of bodhisattvas, because they're so far beyond what we could imagine. So anyway, I hope that helps. Okay. There's time for one more if there's one more question.
Lama Kathy, when you say about it being difficult to fathom, does that also speak to the part of us that doesn't know who we might become if we do all these things? If we practice these bodhisattva behaviors, like a part of us that's like, well, what will be left of me? Like, I just wonder if you could address that. Sometimes there's just kind of a resistance about following that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there is part of us that doesn't really know what Buddhahood would be like. And because we don't know what Buddhahood would be like, we aren't 100% sure we like the idea. And we aren't 100% sure we want to go to Buddhahood, because we're not entirely sure of what it would be like to be completely wise and completely compassionate and to be free from suffering. I mean, right? Because these are things we don't know. We don't know what it would be like to be totally free from suffering. And we don't know what it would be like to be completely wise and completely compassionate. So it's really hard to fathom, what it would be like to be a bodhisattva. And we've been Kempo Rinpoche said one time, he said, we've been so invested in samsaric happiness, thinking that samsaric happiness is what we want. And he said, we've been so invested in it that it's really hard for us to imagine not investing in it anymore. And so I think that's the hardest part for us, is that we don't know what it's like to be a Buddha or to be a bodhisattva. But I think that if we can continue to practice the 6 perfect virtues, what we find is that when we're generous, we feel better. That's the first of the 6 perfect virtues is generosity. And then when we act ethically, it's not always easy, but there is a satisfaction in acting ethically. And patience is also not very easy, but it feels good when we actually can do it. And diligence, when we can actually get on our seats and practice meditation, that's wonderful too. And joyful effort at trying to accomplish our practice, that also feels good. And so does meditation. Now, we don't know what wisdom is going to feel like, but we know that the first 5 of the 6 perfect virtues feel pretty good after we do them. So we know that the path, while difficult, it does have great satisfaction and offer great satisfaction. And Khenpo Rinpoche said, when you practice the 6 perfect virtues, he gave a talk once, and it was titled, "How to Become the Darling of the World." And he said that when you practice the actions of a bodhisattva, people just naturally and spontaneously love you. And I said, and of course, I'm like, sign me up, you know? So I don't know if that helps at all, but I hope it does a little bit.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, because a lot of us say, wow, well, I completely lose my personality and be a jellyfish if I become free from suffering and fully compassionate and fully wise. And Bokha Rinpoche apparently was giving a talk once, and he said, if you lose your sense of humor while you are doing your Dharma practice, or you lose your personality, he said, you're doing it wrong. He said, you will maintain all of the things that you came with. It's just that they will no longer, you will no longer have confusion. So I don't know if any of this is helpful or not. You'll just lose your confusion. So I hope that helps. Okay. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for your patience while we were waiting to communicate with the other folks and get them on board tonight. So welcome to everyone. And I'm going to do some screen sharing now. And let's see who hasn't. Let's see if there's anybody if anybody has not read, could you like do the hand raising? Click that if you haven't read. Oh, okay. Sherry has not read and Maureen has not read. So, okay. So Sherry, I'll have you read first. Let me get it on screen for you. You might have it on your own screen. Let's see if we can find it. 37 Actions of a Bodhisattva. Oh, I know where it is. It's hiding. Okay. I'm not exactly sure why this happens. But when iBooks is brought up, it for some reason it disappears, or it goes to the same screen as Zoom, and then it's really hard to get it to show up. Okay, let's try again. Zoom, screen share. Okay. Okay, we're going to have to start over again one more time. It does not want to. There it is. So how do I get that there? Okay, I guess I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, let's see if we can get it to work. Can you see the 37 practices now or not? Yes, it is. Okay, great. All right. Great. So Sherry, I called on you first. So if you could do me the favor of unmuting your microphone and reading practice number 31.
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
Mhm.
Practice 31, analyzing delusion. If you have not analyzed your own confusion, you might put on a dharmic facade while behaving in a non-dharmic way. Therefore, to continuously analyze your delusion and discard it is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay, thank you. Khenpo Tsultrim Gyaltsen, who is the author of this commentary, has been using the stories from the life of Milarepa to illustrate the various topics of each of the 31 practices. And we can see from this practice 31, analyzing delusion, basically he's saying, if you aren't really paying attention to what you are doing and the mistakes you're making, if you're not paying attention, it's possible that you might think that you're acting like a Dharma person, but you might not actually be behaving like a Dharmic person because you haven't really analyzed your confusion. You haven't really seen your mental afflictions as mental afflictions. I can give an example. Trungpa Rinpoche gave a teaching once about anger. And he said, we make a big mistake about anger. We think it's our friend. And we think that our friend, anger, makes us strong and makes us correct and all of these things. And so he said, but we get it wrong because anger actually makes us stupid and makes us make mistakes. And so he said, we have to begin to see our mental afflictions as being afflictive. And he said, once we start looking at it and seeing it for what it is, we will reach for it as a possible action. We will reach for it less and less and less. And so this is why it's important at the end of every day, as Dharma practitioners, if you have an established Buddhist practice, frequently your teacher will tell you to open your shrine in the morning and say a refuge prayer, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And in the end of the day, they'll say to take refuge again, and then to take the offerings down from the shrine and get ready for the next day. But at the end of the day, if you have time, it's really useful to look at your day and say, well, how did I do today? And annotate or enumerate in your own mind, oh, this went very well. I was able to act properly here, and I was able to do this positively. So I rejoice in these good things that I did. And then you think, well, but then I got angry, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I caused harm to myself and others. And so in that way, I did bad karma. And so then you think about that and you say, okay, I regret that, and I resolve not to repeat it again. And so in that way, by taking responsibility both for the good that we do and the non-virtue that we do, taking responsibility for it, we gradually make progress toward better behavior and more love and compassion, both for ourselves and for others. And so this is one of the things that I encourage my Dharma friends to do, is to try to look at both the good things that you do and dedicate those, and the negative things and regret those. So in any case, the episode that he tells from the life of Milarepa is during the life of Milarepa, he was a yogi who lived in caves and wandered around. And as such, he was not the favorite of trained university scholars, because trained university scholars thought that he might be a little bit of a charlatan, masquerading as a Dharma teacher. And so he tells the story here of Milarepa, who was challenged to a public debate by a university geshe named Dalo. And then Khenpo Tsultrim says, when Dalo failed to defeat the Jetsun Milarepa, the scholar became so enraged they took a handful of dirt and flung it in Milarepa's face. Seeing this affront, Milarepa's disciple, Rinpoche, lost his temper. He said, the Dharma must be properly maintained. Such behavior isn't Dharmic. I must defend my teacher, my guru. And so he picked up a stick and was about to thrash Dalo when Milarepa called out, wait a minute, calm down and meditate on patience. And then he sang a song, Rinpoche, please practice patience, otherwise you will violate the Dharma. When he heard his guru's song, Rinpoche realized he was acting from anger and violating his Bodhisattva vow. You can see that both the scholar and the disciple had deluded themselves into thinking they were practicing Dharma when in fact, they were violating its teachings. The scholar was a monk, and yet he became angry and threw dirt at Milarepa. Rinpoche was a practicing yogi, yet anger had him ready to beat the scholar with a stick. Both men presented the faces of Dharma practitioners when, through self-delusion, they violate the precepts. This story shows how important it is to continuously analyze your body, speech, and mind for signs of confusion. And having analyzed your delusion, you must give it up. This is the true practice of a bodhisattva. And so he's talking about how we have to really be watching ourselves. I know a lot of friends in the movement, the 12-step movement, and of recovery. And in the recovery tradition, they have a lot of sayings. And one of the sayings is that when we are wrong, we promptly admit it. And I've been trying to practice this, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Because sometimes when I act rashly and I'm wrong, I'm not willing to admit to myself that I did it. And so I'm like pretending that that didn't just happen and I didn't just do that. I'm just pretending. But it usually doesn't work long term. And so as a result, I am trying now more and more to pay attention and to try to say I'm sorry or to correct my mistake sooner than the evening prayers, like if I can, if it's a good situation, I can do this. And so at the end of this section, after telling another story about the famous Patra Rinpoche, Khenpo Tsotrem ends this section by saying, one Mahayana prayer for the perfection of patience says, I pray that in this and in all my lifetimes, I will be able to make no mistakes arising from anger, but instead be patient. Well, we will all do our best. Someone asked Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche once, well, look, if anger is my problem and every day I make a resolution not to become angry, and I know in the back of my mind that I'm probably going to be angry again, why do I even bother to make the promise that I'm not going to get angry? Why do I even bother in my evening prayers doing this? And Rinpoche used the example of a cup of water on his table. He said, let's say I have a cup of water, and on the bottom of this cup, I know there's a small crack. And I know that some of that water is going to come out of the small crack when I fill the glass. He said, I still am going to use the glass, even though there's a tiny crack in it, because I know that the majority of the water is going to stay in the glass. And he said, this glass is your promise. After you've confessed your faults in the evening, in your evening prayers, then you promise that you will do your best not to get angry tomorrow. And he said, knowing that you might get angry tomorrow is like the little crack in the bottom of the cup. You know that, and your promise is like the cup. And then knowing that you'll probably break the promise is the little crack in the bottom. He said, but you still make the promise. Because he said, making the promise slows down the momentum of your negative habit. If you don't take responsibility for your negative habits and try to promise not to repeat them, he said, you're not slowing down the momentum of your negativity. He says, at least, he said, this way you're slowing it down a little bit. He said, if you don't bother to make the promise, he said, that makes as much sense as pouring water straight on the table. It makes no sense at all because you don't have your promise. So anyway, so I thought that was interesting. Anybody have questions about this part? I can't see the chat at the moment, but if anybody has a question. Okay. Then Maureen, you're up next. Practice 32, not criticizing other bodhisattvas. And then Helder, I'll get to you next.
So practice 32, not criticizing other bodhisattvas. If, compelled by your own afflictions, you speak of the faults of other bodhisattvas, you yourself will degenerate. Therefore, never to mention the faults of those who have entered the Mahayana path is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay, thank you very much. This one is often difficult for people to put their heads around, because we've all grown up knowing that it is important to call out people who are doing wrong. That's why we have courts, why we have police. It's why we put criminals in jail, and so forth and so on. But this is not what this is talking about. This is talking about failing to see our own faults and then exercising our own faults. If compelled by our own afflictions, you speak of the faults of other bodhisattvas, you yourself will degenerate. This means if you're motivated by trying to show somebody up, if you're trying to show that you're better or purer or in some way better than the other person, and then you criticize them to other people, hoping that that will lower other people's estimation of them, this is actually wrong. And so it's not that we're being asked to pretend that bad people are good. That's not what we're being asked to do. We're actually being asked to be honest about our own faults and to know when we are coming from a good place and when we are not coming from a good place. And so under the description here, it says never to mention the faults of those who have entered the Mahayana path. Well, once again, what he's getting at here is and then he discusses the 7 points of mind training. And it says it directs the reader to think that all positive qualities belong to other sentient beings and that all faults are one's own. This is a little bit difficult for us to do because we're so used to thinking right is right and wrong is wrong. And you can't say that what is wrong is right. And it's not truthful. And it's just not the way our society brings us up. But let's think of it in a different way. Let's think of it as slandering people just for fun and to make ourselves look better. When I was a kid, I was bullied a lot. And when I would come home and I would say, the other girls did this, my mother would say, well, they're just digging a hole under you so they look taller. So that didn't help. I have to say that didn't help much, but now that I'm older, I understand that it was their deficiency and not mine that caused them to act badly. But in any case, what we're being asked to do here, as in the 7-point mind training, is not to sit and stew about other people. Like, oh, that person's so bad. Oh, that person is so bad. Oh, that person is so bad. And then we start to do what my friends in 12-step call gathering your army, where you go around and say, hey, this person treated me bad. You should dislike them. Yeah. And then going over here and say, hey, this person treated me bad. You should pay attention, and so forth. He's really trying to say that often, if you spot it, you got it. In other words, that's a 12-step slogan. And what Bokhar Rinpoche said once, and when he went to visit us in 3-year retreat, where, as you know, people don't get along perfectly in 3-year retreat. I don't know if you have any ideas or thoughts about that, but they don't always get along. So Bokhar Rinpoche came to our retreat house and he said, look, he says, I know it's not easy to live with other people. He said, but I have to tell you that if somebody else's behavior bothers you, it's because you secretly know you have the same behavior and you can't stand it. You just can't stand to see it in somebody else. Well, other people will say, oh, I'm never like that. Well, anyway, you get the picture. So I think it's not easy, but we have to take responsibility for our own faults. I think that's really the number one message here in this verse. We have to take responsibility for our own faults and not try to project our faults on other people. and recognize when we are doing it, that we are doing it, and be willing to think that dwelling on somebody else's faults might cause us some trouble, and it might cause our compassion to be reduced. So I'm ready for discussion on this. Does anybody have something to talk about or ask? Helder, did you want to unmute and ask your question first?
Oh no, I just raised because of the I didn't read it yet.
Oh, okay, very good. I'll have you read next, okay? Okay, so in the meantime, thank you, and I'll get to you in a second then. Does anybody have question or discussion? This one's not easy, I think. Yes.
Wait. Is it similar to the biblical don't look for the log in your neighbor's eye, look for the, or don't look for the
Splinter.
splinter, look for the log in your own?
Yep. It's right on. It's really right along the same line, because in the 7-point mind training that we studied last time, there's a section in 7-point mind training where there's like a series of these three. There's a series of 3 slogans that all go together. One of them is don't talk about weak points. Don't think about the affairs of others, and work on your own stronger disturbing emotions first. So in this way, it says don't talk about weak points, which means don't, harp on somebody's faults to someone. But then it even says don't even think about the affairs of others. And he's and basically he's telling us not to dwell on others' faults, because we could waste so much of our life, so much of our energy and our life we can waste on it. We can waste thinking about other people, like, oh, they should do this and they should do that, and they treat me bad and they treat me bad. And by stewing on all this, not at the very least, we're wasting time. At the very least, we're wasting time. And at the very worst, we're actually turning ourselves into kind of sour individuals that are just always worried about other things. It's like we're kind of souring our love and compassion. Anyhow, so I think they're related. All of these are related. Thanks for asking. Other stuff that people might want to talk about.
Lama Kathy,
Yeah.
this is Patricia. So is this referring to not talking to other people about someone else's faults, as opposed to talking with that person if you're in a relationship about faults?
Yeah, I do think
after you've examined.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's really about do not talk to other people about someone else's faults. But what about if you're in relationship and you're and you feel like, and you think that there's a problem in the relationship, and you explore each other's faults? Is that?
He's basically saying, and I think the operative phrase here is this first phrase: if compelled by your own afflictions, you speak of the faults of other bodhisattvas. So I think that this really is, to me, the operative phrase here. So it's very, very difficult to have a non-emotionally charged conversation with a person you're in a relationship with, but some people can do it. But I think that if people are working together, particularly if they're working with a therapist or a counselor, and they're trying to understand each other better, I think all of these kinds of things are important to do, because that's about give and take. But if the person is compelled by their own afflictions to speak of the faults of other bodhisattvas, meaning, this person is bad, and it does seem to me to talking about this person to someone else, not talking to a person who you're trying to work something out with. I think that's always a good idea, but it's always a good idea for people to work out their problems. But we also have to know our limitations, because sometimes we want to work on a problem, but the other person doesn't. And then we get mad because the other person doesn't want to do what we want to do. So I don't know if that's helpful or if that made things worse.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. And by the way, all of these things are about what perfect bodhisattvas do. And so when we hear that perfect bodhisattvas never mention the faults of others, then we think, well, I couldn't be like that, so I may as well not try. But I think we could look at it differently. We could say, well, okay, I'm not a perfect bodhisattva, so I can't do this perfectly, but I could at the very least try once a day not to trash talk somebody, even just once a day, not to just let everybody know what I think about something. I hope that helps. Other questions about this?
Lama Kathy?
Yes.
Me again.
Yeah. Hi there.
Him again.
It's okay.
So, recent events at work.
Oh, yeah.
I catch myself and much later than I am happy to admit. But I catch myself like having indulged in this type of thinking, like I never even, read any of this stuff. You know what I mean?
I know. I know.
But my comment on that is, and I mean, I do the best I can, and sometimes I miss it more often than I catch it. Sometimes I catch it sooner, sometimes I catch it later.
Yeah.
But I know how I feel after spinning on that. And what that makes me think is that it's got very little to do about whether or not the other person deserves it or not. That I have to take that completely out of the equation.
Yeah.
And it becomes, the practicality becomes clear to me about the whole idea that you don't leave a single being behind, that you don't abandon not one, because whether this person really is the worst or not, my going down that path of indulging that type of negativity, even if they do deserve it, let's say I'm right? Let's say I'm completely justified. But from a practical perspective, I'm still derailing this whole project by doing that. And so I don't know if you had a comment for that, or if that's the right way to think of it, but it's an aspect of that.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think the main thing that he's trying to say here is we should look at our own faults first and admit our own faults first, and then decide if what we're mad at is our own faults when we think we see something in somebody else. I think that's really what he's asking. Just look at yourself first and make sure that you're not making something up in that other person, and even if they do have that fault, what's your business? What business is it of yours? It's like, it's really hard, because again, all human beings, we're hardwired for justice. We want justice to be done. And that's actually a good thing, that we want justice to be done. But how much do we want to unsettle our own inner equilibrium to just be right, you know, to be the person who's right in an argument. I don't know. It is a tough balancing act that we have to do. And so I think that we can't look at it from an all or nothing point of view, or like I'm always going to trash people or I'm never going to trash people. I mean, we can't, you know, we can't exactly be like that and say it's all or nothing. We can say, I'm going to reflect on myself first before I open my mouth. Or even just reflect. What did they say? Engage brain before you engage your mouth. Is that what they? I don't know. Does this help at all?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to number 33. Helder, you will be the next reader. And if anybody wants to be in the on deck circle to read after Helder, you can put your hand up or whatever. I can only see a few people, but oh, I see a couple of hands up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. So Helder, you go ahead and please read number 33 for me.
Yes. Desire for gain and honor leads to arguments, and activities of listening, reflecting, and meditating decline. Therefore, to relinquish attachment to the households of friends, relatives, and sponsors is a practice of Bodhisattva.
This I like this one because there's also those of you who studied the 7-point mind training, you'll recognize the slogan, don't aim to be the fastest. There's a slogan in the 7-point mind training that's like, don't aim to be the fastest. And it basically says, I think reading this is going to really actually be helpful. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. Oh, it's don't aim to win. Okay. So how it goes is in a horse race, this is Jamgon Control's Great Path of Awakening. Hang on here. Jamgon Control's Great Path of Awakening. He says, in a horse race, the aim is to be the fastest. Among Dharma people, there are often hopes of receiving more attention or being more highly regarded than others, and little schemes are made up to find ways to acquire possessions. Give these up. Have no concern about receiving or not receiving recognition or prestige. And so when he says this, this is really to me what this same verse is saying. Desire for gain and honor among Dharma people leads to arguments, and activities of listening, reflecting, and meditating decline. Because you remember from way back at the beginning of the 37 actions, it said these 3 disciplines: learning the Dharma, meditating on the Dharma, and reflecting on the Dharma. So these things, those are the 3 things that help us to improve. And so if we're busy competing with other people, we're going to do more competition and less learning, reflecting, and meditating. And so therefore, to relinquish attachment to the households of friends, relatives, and sponsors, because a lot of people will say, well, I want to get more offerings, or I want this person to be my sponsor. No, I want them to be my sponsor, and so forth. And so it's another way of turning Dharma into non-Dharma. So we have to not do that. I see that we have 2 other people with hands up, and that's Patricia and then Bill. Now, Patricia, was that for a question, or were you going to read?
I can read.
Okay, thank you. Number 34. Oh, honey, you'll have to unmute, dear.
Yeah, how's that? Can you hear
That's
me?
good. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Practice 34, abandoning harsh speech. Harsh speech disturbs the mind of others and compromises a bodhisattva's right conduct. Therefore, to give up harsh and unpleasant speech is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Thank you. Golly, well, I tell you, we've just been through a thing, haven't we? We've just been through a thing. It's been about 4 years long, and we're starting to feel a little relief today, because when we hear people being harsh and bullying others and being mean, it hurts. It hurts us, because just as human beings are hardwired for justice, we're also hardwired for love. And we prefer to be around loving people and not to be around harsh people. So I have a feeling it's going to take us a little while to get over this trauma that we've all been through of listening to a lot of harsh speech for the last few years. And we're probably going to get more harsh speech over the next 4 years too. But the fact of the matter is, because human beings tend to express their anger in an unbridled way, this does disturb other people's minds. So just because we want to say a thing doesn't mean we have to say a thing. And we have to recognize that. I have a couple of friends who are ministers, and they told me that they never swear. And the reason that they never swear is because they don't want it to come out accidentally when they're talking to someone's grandma. I totally get it. I totally get this. Because if we have a habit of acting a certain way, that habit will come out at all the wrong times. And so I have tried, since I became a Lama, to not swear. It is so hard. And sometimes I do it in the privacy of my own home, but I try never to do it ever, because I just can't, because it's the same thing. It disturbs people's minds. It's extremely harsh on the ears and on the heart. And whenever I say sharp words to others, I got to tell you, I go through something, because I tend to have a temper. And so if I get angry and say a harsh word, oh my gosh, I feel pretty bad after. And then I do lots of purification mantras, because it's just not how I want to be. So, Khenpo Tsultrim Jamso says there's a couple of reasons why we don't want to speak harshly. Number one, he says, you yourself become, you've become disturbed. He says, remember something where somebody blamed you unfairly and you became disturbed and frustrated. And this is why he says it's wise to remember that harsh and unpleasant speech causes others pain. The second reason to give up harsh speech is because it compromises a bodhisattva's right conduct, which is to benefit others. Now, disturbing someone's mind accomplishes just the opposite. It causes harm. Therefore, harsh and unpleasant speech violates the bodhisattva commitment. Now, my own wonderful teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, he often used to say, oh, every now and then I will say these really harsh and unpleasant things. And we're all going, when did he ever do that? But he often criticized himself for not speaking gently in all situations. But I have to tell you, I seldom, if ever, heard him say a sharp word to anyone. So, and the only ones I remember are the ones I heard. And I heard them because I was in danger of doing something really wrong. So in any case, we have to understand that what we say and do has an impact on other people. And as one of my friends like to say, people may not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I worry about that sometimes. It's a terrible responsibility to be a Dharma teacher, because you have to really always be conscious of that and to try never to make somebody feel bad. And so anyhow, I'm working on it. Well, Bill, I see your hand up to read. So let's have you read number 35.
My specialty.
Okay.
Once you become accustomed to the mental afflictions, they are hard to cure with antidotes. Therefore, with the remedies of mindfulness and awareness, To eliminate afflictions the moment they arise is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I'm going to need a reader for number 36 and number 37, so consider. And I'll ask for a reader in a minute. Eliminating mental afflictions. Ah, yes. Remember what I was talking about a little bit ago about our habits? We get into a habit. Thank you, Deborah. We'll have you read next. Once we get into a habit, there's Khenpo Rinpoche said, both good actions and negative actions have a momentum. That if you start being reactive, getting angry and losing your temper with other people every time something doesn't go your way, he said that's what you end up practicing. You know, Khenpo Rinpoche said that's what you end up practicing, and so that builds a lot of momentum. But then he also said that if you continuously wish in your heart for other beings to be happy, if you think, may I benefit beings, just that simple wish, may I benefit beings, may I benefit beings, may everything I say and do benefit beings. And he said, the more you say that, he said, the more the momentum of goodness starts within you. And he said, eventually this momentum of goodness becomes self-sustaining, and it begins to expand and spread throughout your life. So what he's saying in this is that once you become accustomed to your mental afflictions, which is what happens when you speak harshly and then never take responsibility. If you speak harshly, never take responsibility, never apologize, never, then the momentum of negativity just builds because you're not paying attention. And so this is why he's saying they're hard to cure with antidotes. So this is why every day at the end of the day, it's really, really good to examine your day, take responsibility and rejoice in all the good that you did, and take responsibility and regret all the wrong that you did. So in that way, he's saying they're hard to cure with antidotes when they get a good head of steam. And how do we notice when we're doing something wrong? The remedies of mindfulness and alertness, or mindfulness and awareness. And it says here, to eliminate mental afflictions the moment they arise. Well, we're not quite there yet. We're not quite, again, that's how perfect bodhisattvas, that's how perfect bodhisattvas are, right? But we're not perfect yet. So so we have to get as close to the moment of ignition of our mental affliction as we can. And those of you, again, who studied 7-point mind training will remember in the book, The Great Path of Awakening. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Page in the 2005 edition, the gold one with the blue stripe. There's the 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 seeds of virtue slogan, in which Jamgon Khantrul says, if you feel some negative mental affliction, what you could do with that negative mental affliction is actually use it as the seed of virtue by saying, okay, I'm angry. And believe it or not, you're going to know when you're angry because your temperature is going to start going up. You're going to start clenching your jaw or your shoulders or your neck. And you'll actually feel this feeling of, Pema Chodron calls it shenpa, or being hooked by your mental affliction. When you feel that, that's when it's time to take action and identify your feeling. Like, I am feeling angry, or I am feeling sad, or I am feeling frustrated. And then you universalize that by saying, and now I take on the frustration or the anger or the sadness of all beings in this anger and sadness that I'm feeling. And by my doing this, may their load be lighter, and may we all become Buddhas. And in that way, admitting to ourselves how we're feeling can actually help us go farther on the Bodhisattva path. Does anybody have any questions about this? Let's see. Oh, I see there are some things in chat. I have not been seeing chat. Sorry. How do we avoid mental affliction when working in an environment that encourages competition? Yeah, I know. Well, here's the thing. I wonder if maybe it's good to recognize when we're feeling competitive and every now and then try to include other people in our success. That takes a little creative thinking. But yeah, I would say that would be the first thing I would suggest, would be to find some way to share your success, mentally share your success with other people. Even if you can't share the credit with other people for something, you can mentally, when you succeed in a task, mentally share it with everyone in your team. You don't have to tell them you're doing it. You just mentally share it. And that could be very well how you think about it inside your own mind, that yes, I'm doing this because the boss is making us compete, which I think is probably not the better way to go, but it's what a lot of people have learned in business. And but what you could do is, even if you win, mentally give the benefit to all of the people on your team and pray that they're okay. Yes, I see Christine. Yes.
Hello, Lama Kathy and everyone.
Hello.
I just wanted to comment on that because I come across that a lot in the work I do. Is very competitive.
That's right.
There is somewhere else, I can't cite exactly where, but we're also taught to rejoice in the success of others.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do. Like, I make sure to congratulate people when they have success, or to, share share when they did something wonderful. Usually it's about making money, but
Yeah.
people work hard to do that,
Right.
to earn their money. And I think it's important, or at least for me, to let others know that I'm happy for them. I'm not jealous. I'm not upset. I'm not annoyed that it wasn't me. I'm happy for them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's, for me, that's a good way to not feel guilty about being competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I like it. I like it because, we wish that businesses were more cooperative than competitive, but that's business. It's like, what can you do? We can't change the world on that. But
Right.
I like what you're talking about, because I remember it, what you're saying reminds me of what Kempo Karthar Rinpoche used to say, that if you feel jealousy because you think somebody else got something that you deserved,
Right.
he said, why don't you try being happy for them instead? And
Right.
it'll give you more peace of mind, and it might improve your relationship with that person as well, if you're not busy feeling jealous. You know what I mean? So I think that both of these techniques, mentally sharing your success and mentally rejoicing, or actually using words and congratulations to people who succeed in their field, I think all those things are showing that we have some emotional intelligence,
Yeah,
and that
it also helps me not go down that really bad mental process, that path of thinking it should have been me. Why wasn't
I
it?
hear that.
How come they got it and I didn't? That's even
Right.
worse. I don't want to think like that.
Right.
So stop it before it starts by letting them know that I'm thrilled that they, made that sale, or got that
Right.
audition, or whatever. Okay,
Sure.
I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
Well, no, but I do appreciate you bringing that up, because it is an important point. It is an important point. So thank you for that. Let's see. I'm going to turn the page here and ask Deborah to read, because I just realized we're at 24 minutes past the hour. Yikes! So we're going to run over 5 minutes, I think. So let's. Deborah, you can read practice number 36.
All right. Remaining mindful and aware. In brief, Wherever you are and whatever you do, always examine the state of your mind. Cultivating mindfulness and awareness continuously to benefit others is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay. I like this. I really like this verse because it just covers everything. It absolutely covers everything. Wherever you are and whatever you do, always be aware of what's in your mind. When we practice Shamatha meditation, just a simple breath awareness meditation, when we practice shamatha, we're learning how to become aware of what's on our mind. And at first, it's a little painful to become aware of what's on our mind, because then we have to start taking responsibility, right? It's just not fun to recognize that we sometimes hold grudges, and it's not fun to see how frustrated we get sometimes, or this idea of talking badly to others about other people. I mean, you know, coming to terms with who we are, what a mess, right? But by the same token, if we can use that awareness to cultivate mindfulness and awareness, you know, always examining the state of our mind, we have the opportunity to practice this 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 seeds of virtue that's described in the mind training book. If we're not aware of our thoughts and feelings and emotions, how could we dedicate goodness to others? How could we take on the negativity of others? So maintaining an awareness may be painful, but it actually is very constructive. So Kempo Sultram says here, whether you are in a remote monastery or in a city, whether you're a monastic or a householder, you must be continually mindful and aware of the state of your mind. This means knowing your real motivation and intention. Oh, that's so hard, isn't it? Like, I have to admit my motivation. Yikes. Finding out why we are doing something and for whose benefit. Always investigate your true motivation. To cultivate continuous mindfulness and awareness means to accomplish the benefit of others as well as yourself. Even if you are helping others, still check your motivation. It is possible to work for others' benefits for the wrong reason. Therefore, this verse summarizes all 35 practices that have preceded it. And so now we're going to recite the 37th practice. And do we have someone who hasn't read yet? Anybody haven't read yet? Okay. All right, well then I'll read. To clear away the suffering of all infinite beings with superior knowledge, free of concepts of the 3 spheres, to dedicate to enlightenment the merit accumulated through these efforts is the practice of a bodhisattva. To clear away the suffering of all infinite beings. That's really what bodhisattvas are capable of doing. Once a bodhisattva, we're bodhisattvas in training right now. We're doing our best to practice it, falling down, getting up, falling down, getting up over and over again. But if we should accomplish the first level of bodhisattva awakening, if we can actually accomplish that, we will actually be able to genuinely help all sentient beings in a way we cannot even imagine helping them now. When Patricia asked earlier, you know, like how it would be to be a bodhisattva and how hard it is to imagine that, I don't know what it's like myself, but wouldn't it just be amazing? Wouldn't it just be amazing to be able to benefit every being just by being thought of? Wow, right? So in order to clear away the suffering of all infinite beings with superior knowledge, free of concepts of the 3 spheres. The 3 spheres are the doer or the subject, and the object and the action. So in other words, if we are resting our mind in its own pure Buddha nature and just resting our mind, then when we give a gift to someone, we're not thinking, me giving you this gift. And so there's no clinging to the gift, no clinging to the idea of giving, no clinging to somebody saying thank you. And so there's a purity about that gift. And so if we would obtain that kind of superior knowledge, wow, So in order to get closer to superior knowledge, which we're not there yet, to get closer to superior knowledge, we dedicate to enlightenment all of the merit that we have accumulated through these efforts. In other words, we don't save the merit to ourselves, for ourselves. We don't save it, we offer it to others. To dedicate to enlightenment, the merit accumulated through these efforts is the practice of a bodhisattva. And so here's what Khyentse Sultram says. How does a bodhisattva dedicate merit? The bodhisattva applies the superior knowledge of emptiness to the three spheres. This means that he or she purifies the dedication process by realizing there is no one to dedicate merit, no merit to be dedicated, and no one to receive the merit. Subject, object, and action do not truly exist. This is the meaning of being free of the concepts of the three spheres, and it cannot be separated from the superior knowledge that is with which it is suffused, the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Without understanding that the three spheres do not truly exist, it is quite difficult to comprehend how to dedicate merit in this way. Imagine a dream in which you are sitting, got to turn the page, before a shrine. In the exact moment of dedication, you awaken and instantly realize that no one has been dedicating merit, no merit has been dedicated, and no one has received any. It was all a dream. This is how to understand the practice of dedicating merit. In Gampopa's book, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, he suggests that we imagine having all of these qualities and think no giver, no receiver, no object, no action. But that's not easy either. But even if all we do is practice thinking about this, it's still really positive. Many of you will be familiar with the dedication of merit prayer that begins Sonam Diyi Tamche Zikpani, which is may through all the merit accumulated, may all beings become awakened. And then there's another 4-line prayer that begins with the words Jampal, Pawo, Jitar, Kimpadang, Kuntuzampo, Deyan Deshinte, Dedakungi, Jesuda Loching, Gewarida, Tamchera Tungo. And this says, like the Bodhisattva Manjushri and the Bodhisattva Kunten Zongpo or Samantabhadra, Bhadra, like they dedicate merit perfectly, may my dedication be like theirs. And my ritual master, Lama Tashi Dundup, said that the reason that we say this prayer and why it's important to say this prayer at the end is that he says, by saying this prayer, like the Bodhisattva Manjushri, who can perfectly dedicate merit, and like the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, who perfectly dedicates merit, may my dedication be like theirs. He said, you're doing the best you can do to purify your dedication. And so I think that's another thing you can do. And then we come to the very end, the 2 epilogues, Epilogue A and Epilogue B. Relying on what is taught in the sutras, tantras, treatises, and the words of genuine masters, I have composed these 37 bodhisattva practices to benefit those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. Because my intelligence is small and my studies few, I cannot compose poetry to please the scholars. Yet, since they are based on sutras and teachings of the genuine masters, I believe that these bodhisattva practices are not mistaken. Nevertheless, since the vast conduct of a bodhisattva is difficult to fathom for one with an inferior intellect such as mine, I pray to the genuine masters to consider with patience all my mistakes, such as contradictions, incoherence, and so on. By the virtue of the merit gathered here, by the power of relative and ultimate bodhicitta, may all sentient beings become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells neither in the extreme of existence nor in that of peace. Interesting, this epilogue here mirrors the beginning of the book when it says Namo Lokeshvarya. You have seen that all things are without true existence, and you see that things neither come nor go, and yet you appear for the benefit of beings. Chenrezig, I praise you. So now the composition is circular and completed, and by writing this book, he is saying that what he did was not write something new, but rather he studied the sutras and the tantras and the commentaries and extracted their essence and then wrote this based upon them. And you will find this a lot in Tibetan compositions, because in Tibet, books were very rare. And so being able to study the sutras at length, being able to study the tantras at length was not easy. And so people like Gampopa and Tsongkhapa and all the great masters, they would summarize their understanding, distill them into memorizable verses, both in prayers and in compositions like this one, in which written in verse, it's easy to memorize. And then all of those teachings from all extracted from all of those sutras, extracted from all of those tantras, and brought into some type of distillation and perspective is then given to us. And then through the prayers and the memorization of these, then we own them. Once they're written on our heart by memorization, then we have them forever. And so this is part of the custom of these prayers and compositions. I'm working with a friend to study this book, The Aspirational Prayer of Mahamudra by the Third Karmapa. And he's like, well, what is this prayer for? Why do they do it? And I said, well, it's all of the teachings about Mahamudra in one easy to memorize form. And so that's why these compositions are written this way, so that they're easy for us to memorize. So I know I told you I would hold you over 5 minutes, and it's been a little more than 5 minutes. But I see that Tom has mentioned the end of Shantideva, where he says, as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the misery of the world. These verses are precious, and they're more precious than gold. And if we can just write a few of them on our hearts and memorize them, these are going to be incredibly helpful. So I talked a lot, sorry. But if people are willing to hang around for another 3 minutes, I'll take questions if there are any. You can type them in chat or unmute your microphone. Okay. Well, we did it. We finished the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva. Woo! I'm so happy for you, right? I'm so happy that you had this opportunity to study this 37 practices, because it's meant a lot to me in my life, and to know that you guys are reading it and so forth. That's fantastic. And you can email me if you want to get the little golden booklets. You have to kind of promise to try to read it 100 times. But if you want to do that and you haven't gotten one yet, you can email me and email me your postal address, and I'll send you one. Oh gosh, it's the end. I don't like for anything to end, but we can dedicate the merit. How about that? Okay. It's been a joy to spend time with all of you, and I'm going to be taking a break because in February, Lama Adam and his friend Lama Mitchell from Mississippi are going to be doing a twofer. You're going to get 2 lamas for the price of one, which is all by donation. And he's going to be studying Pema Chodron's book, Welcoming the Unwelcome, and that'll be a 5-week book study. And I have not decided what I'm going to do next, but I'll be thinking about it. And if you have any ideas of books you would like to study that we could do in like April, April or May, just give it some thought and write your ideas and email them to me. And I'll see if we can't study another book together. How about that?
Thank you.
Yeah. And please take good care of yourselves, because I know, it's like the pandemic has been going around us for so long, but it does seem like vaccines are around the corner. I know that old folks like me, we're first in line, but there's not many vaccines to be had in the rural area where I live. So I may end up getting mine at the same time all the younger people get it, but I'll be hanging in there and being by Zoom and all of that stuff until then, so, I'll take care, you take care, and so forth. Let's gather together, mentally gather together all of the merit that has been accumulated through reciting and studying this book, and mentally dedicate it to all suffering beings, and that's everybody. We pray for all beings who are suffering, and we make the aspiration that through this merit, they be freed from their suffering, come into the knowledge of the Dharma, come into the knowledge and under the care of great masters, and become Buddhas themselves. I'll recite the short prayer in English. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Okay. Thank you. And if you want to write to me, it'll be down in chat. It's Lama Kathy, LAMAKATHY, at columbusktc.org. Thanks to Tracy for being the gatekeeper and helper tonight from the Zoom team at Columbus KTC. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lama Kathy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Yay,
you so much.
thank
Take care of
you.
yourself. Bye-bye.
Take care of
Yeah,
yourself.
you guys
Thank you.
too.